Do you know something I don't know? When I heard those 7 words one night from my son Philip, who was 21 at the time, I didn't realize the impact it would have on my family's life over the course of 12 and a half years. It was the beginning of a journey that I never thought in my wildest imagination ever could happen to anyone, let alone my son, nor would I have wished this journey on my worst enemy if I had one. But his story of mental illness began 2.5 years earlier. At the age of 18 and enjoying, I thought, his first semester of college, Philip came home for Thanksgiving break and tells his dad, Rick, and me he has depression and can't return to college after the semester. I assured him with medication he could live a somewhat normal life. After all, he was the most normal kid growing up, and he had just experienced a great senior year at East Rowan High School, where he was full of life and friends, excelling in his classes, and a standout cross-country runner, winning one race after another. But his life was anything but normal during the next 2.5 years. While there were periods of stability, and he even ran his own business, there were many more days where he could barely get out of bed. But the day came when he said those 7 words, "Do you know something I don't know?" I still vividly recall him saying it, and while I thought it was odd, I didn't think much of it at the time. But I came to understand the reason soon after, and we realized our son was very ill. He was delusional, psychotic, and paranoid. The story he told his dad and me rattled us to the core. What he thought happened was very real to him. He told me he was so scared he almost stepped in front of a tractor-trailer truck to end it. Next, we had to find him help, but every psychiatrist that we called had a several-week wait list. We didn't know what to do or where to turn, but we were thankful for the guidance of some dear friends who had experienced mental illness with loved ones. He was eventually diagnosed with schizoaffective disorder, and the 12.5 years that followed was a roller coaster ride of in and out hospital stays, more times than I can count. His illness was hard to treat because the medications caused nasty side effects, one being severe depression. And with the depression came suicidal thoughts. If he took his meds, he'd feel suicidal or have other side effects, and if he didn't take his meds, he'd have the scary symptoms of the illness. For him, he lost either way he turned, and at times he didn't even have an insight into his illness, which would cause him to question why he needed medication. He tried many combinations of medications, but none would keep him stable or feel well for any length of time. And early on, we learned how broken the mental health system in our country is. There's too much paperwork, red tape, and delays to get needed services, and good supportive treatment programs in Rowan County were lacking, so we had to seek help elsewhere. About 7 years into the schizoaffective disorder, he attempted to end his life, but changed his mind. He cried out afterwards, "Why did I stop? I don't want to live like this." We talked him down from the ledge, so to speak, after that, and he talked himself down from the ledge as well, because he truly wanted to live. But he finally gave hope that he would ever be okay, and on October 2nd, 2018, my husband got the call that no one wants to get. "Your son has committed suicide." Did we expect to get that call one day? Yes. Did we do everything that we could to help him with his illness? We'd like to think so, despite the mental health laws not always being in our favor. Could we have talked him off of the ledge one more time? Maybe. But he had had enough, and he was tired of the fight. He had held on for so long, hoping with all that he had in him that he'd feel better and have a life. He didn't see an end to his struggle, and while we certainly do not think suicide is an answer, we did understand. He often questioned the purpose of his suffering. I told him that I didn't know, and if I could have taken his illness on myself so that he could have a life, I would have done it. I told him we may never know this side of eternity. Probably what hurts even more than the suicide was the horrible life he had to live. Rick, April, Allison, and I lost Philip long before the suicide, and my son-in-laws, Bryce and Nathan, never got to know their real brother-in-law. His illness robbed us all. He ran and won many hard races in his cross-country career, but the hardest race he ever ran was the last 12.5 years of his life. Those were a living hell. something out of a horror movie that you couldn't even imagine in your wildest dreams. Every story of suicide and mental illness is different, but I hope my story brings to light what a person goes through when their brain isn't working properly, because the struggle and pain is real. The deep, dark pit of depression that you see no way out of, those were Philip's words, is real. The delusion, psychosis, mania, PTSD is real. And if we can be, as a society, more understanding of someone who suffers from something so cruel, then hopefully the stigma attached to mental illness and suicide can lessen, and we can show more love and support to those who face at times a life totally out of control. Because when the brain isn't functioning as it should, things can happen that you can't even fathom. That person that you see acting out, walking down the street, they're not a whack job. They have a name. They are someone's child, sibling, husband, etc. They are loved by others who are hurting because the person they once knew doesn't exist anymore, and they miss them. 1 in 4 Americans suffer from some form of mental illness. It can affect anyone, regardless of social status, color of skin, or intelligence level. And I'm hopeful that with the United Way's new funding model that recognizes the top issues affecting our county, that we can make a difference in the lives of those who suffer from such a devastating illness. I hope you will join me in supporting the United Way in this endeavor to help tackle this very important need within our county.
Your support and contribution to the United Way will help impact the lives of so many people and families devastated by the mental health crisis in Rowan County.